Hello, hello. This is Alex Burkett, and you're listening to the Long Game Podcast. In this episode, we talk about audience development. It's part of our Kitchen Side series where we show you the behind-the-scenes discussions, brainstorms, and decision-making processes that happen at our content marketing agency, Omniscient Digital. Now, when Jimmy Daly wrote an article a few years ago called "Your Blog is a Library, Not a Publication," I was stoked. Most blogs won't develop a big audience of passionate followers who read every single post chronologically, but you can certainly set your blog up to be a reference library that effectively answers searchers' questions and converts those readers who are delighted. The problem, however, is that some creators and some businesses can and do build audiences and can and do act as publications. In the best case scenario, your blog can act as both a library and a publication. Think companies like HubSpot, Intercom, CXL, etc. In most of our client work and most of our strategy, we pursue what's known as a barbell strategy, with about 70 to 85% of our work, of our keywords, of our content being driven by the library model. We pursue strategic keywords, we build links, and we hope to convert searchers on individual blog posts. The remaining 20%, more or less, is what we call buzzworthy content. Now, that is more experimental content, and it could be to drive links, and it could be to drive social shares, and it could be to build an audience. So overall, building an audience and owning an audience is powerful stuff. If you're able to do so, you can effectively motivate action, change ideas and perceptions about the market in general, and corral your fans if you have an audience. The question then remains, how do you actually develop an audience? So what follows is a discussion between me and my co-founder, Ali Decker, about that subject. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Long Game Podcast. So the topic is audience building or audience development. And I can't remember exactly how I stumbled upon this idea, but it was 2 or 3 days ago. And I think I saw a tweet or something talking about, building followers and creating trust. And I think it actually had something to do with the over-reliance on search engines for distribution and how to decouple from that. Now, as an agency, we index pretty heavily on search engines, but we also have this bucket called buzzworthy content, which I think is, in our primary view, it's focused at building links or getting social shares, but I think it's the type of content that also caters towards building an audience. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to write an article all about how do you even build an audience? Or what does it even mean to have an audience? I think that's a fundamental question I want to cover. So I wrote down some questions to help me structure this with the article that I'm writing. So first off, what does it mean to, quote, build an audience or to, quote, follow somebody?
Speaking from the writer side or the consumer side?
Either way. I mean, what does it mean when you follow somebody? What does that mean to you?
Personally, that means I bypass Google and I look at what they've written, no matter what the topic is. Obviously, there's like a general niche or topic consistency, but I appreciate the way that they think and the way that they approach whatever they're writing about, that I will become interested in it based on what they've recently published. I have a handful of writers that I check in on or follow because I call them good thinkers. I like the way they think. I like the way that they write. And it's kind of the same like that article I shared with you, like how you have a favorite author, their newest book, you're going to buy it. Doesn't matter what it's about. I kind of think that translates more into blogging and writing online than anybody can admit. Because so many things are just query-based, keyword-based, which there's value to that. But I think building up a reading habit outside of Google alone is incredibly powerful.
When you say check in with, does that mean that you follow them on Twitter? Does that mean that you go to their website? Are you subscribed to their email list? I guess I'm looking more tactically, be a creator with an audience, what does an audience actually mean?
Gosh, when I say check in, I mean, I do all of the above. Whatever they've got to keep themselves top of mind, I'll do it. I love a writer. Her name's Steph Smith. I think she runs a newsletter over at The Hustle, but I don't follow The Hustle, but I check in on her blog at least once a week. hoping that she's got something new. Doesn't matter what it's, I mean, she writes about everything from tech to remote work to like women in tech to writing itself. All of it is relevant to me because I appreciate her point of view and I love the way she writes, and I essentially want to be her. So I feel like that like fuels so much of my inspiration, is like, who is someone that I would love to switch places with? Doesn't matter what they're writing about, just because I love their approach. But yeah, I mean, she's got an email newsletter. I'm on that. I follow her on Twitter. Anywhere that they share themselves and keep themselves top of mind, that's what I constitute a following.
Yeah, I think what I was getting at is the following aspect is a little bit more nebulous than a lot of people would consider. So when you're measuring something, precision is a big factor, right? Like how precise can you measure a given moment and like count that and log that in your kind of like dashboard. So like a conversion, if you buy something, that's a pretty precise measure. But I think that anything on the buzzworthy / branding side, including like brand awareness, is pretty fuzzy, like what it actually means to be aware of a brand. And in our case, like what it means to be a follower of somebody could have way different definitions depending on like who they are and like also what category they fall in.
Right.
Because like I was kind of thinking this out in my own, who I follow. And I have so many different layers and examples of how I follow people. So I kind of layered them out like by how clear it is that I'm a follower. So the first one I gave, like I pay for some subscriptions to people's Substacks. So I pay for,
that's a strong one.
Yeah. Like I'm giving them money to basically consume what they write. And that would include Matt Taibbi. There's this persuasion community, a lot of like political writers and people who do this full time. I just pay them. And that's similar, like we do with John Bonini and his Patreon. Right. So that's like kind of top tier, right? Like we're handing over money for their opinions. And then there's like the next layer, which is subscribing to somebody's email list, I think. So I subscribe to CXL Institute's email list. There's probably 2 or 3 blogs that I subscribe to, Joanna Wiebe, several in the CRO space, right? And then I follow people on Twitter. So I think that's also, there's people that I wouldn't even consider, like some of them I follow and some of them I technically follow on Twitter, but I wouldn't consider myself in their audience, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah.
So there's people who are just kind of like friends or acquaintances that I'm not like waiting for every word they say, but somebody like Pat Blaya on Twitter, I'm a follower of his, like I'm in his audience. And then further down from that, like there are kind of specific use cases. So there's this website called paleoleap.com. And it's all these paleo recipes. And I'm not subscribed to their email list. I don't pay them. But every time I want a new recipe, I go to their website. I basically search, site:/paleoleap.com and Brussels sprouts. Or, I'm trying to find recipes in the moment. Yeah. So it's very context based. And then Atlas Obscura is this website that it's like a travel site with only unique and interesting things to do. So whenever I'm in a new city, I'll search, site:/atlasobscura.com, Orlando, or something like that, and only go to it in that moment. But I consider myself a follower of those sites too.
So if you follow those sites, why don't you subscribe to their emails?
I don't want any more emails. I get way too many. I'm trying to.
So delete, you just want what you need from them.
Yeah, and I don't need a recipe a day.
Yeah,
and Atlas Obscura, like I don't want to know what cool shit there is to do in New Zealand if I'm not there.
Right.
So it's very context dependent. And actually, here's another example. One of my favorite people that I follow is Simo Ahava, who's the like godfather of Google Tag Manager. But I'm not in Google Tag Manager that often, so I don't actually subscribe to his email list. I think I would pay him if he had a Patreon or something, just because he's that valuable. But I don't need that information all the time. So I go to his website and I site search when I need like a specific thing. So there's some things where I don't want to read everything they write, but when I'm searching for a topic that they're known for, I go straight to them.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess that does redefine how I shared it then. I am not like a huge participator in the attention economy. I keep myself like offline if I really don't need anything. So when I consider myself a follower or an audience member, I think of those who I like want to hear everything from. But the way you unpack those layers, I would consider myself a follower of more people then. Going back to the paid aspect, do you pay folks even when you don't read their stuff? Or do you read everything you pay for?
No, I definitely, people that I pay for, I don't read all their stuff. I was just thinking about that today. I deleted 3 of Matt Taibbi's emails just because I'm so tired of politics and like discussions around that theme.
But you continue to pay him because you appreciate him and you want to support him?
Yeah, and I'll get value and like read every once in a while, but I simply don't have the time or appetite to read that much about politics.
Mm-hmm.
But part of me, it's almost like a charity. Like I think it's important to fund good independent journalists. So I'll pay for people like that just because I think it's a good mission to do so. And I like paying creators. I like people who are like putting out good integrity-based content regardless of the space. But yeah, I'm going through a thing. I'm trying to consume way less. Like I actually don't want to like read that much new content from anybody. Yeah. So, but I still want to contribute to those people who are creating it.
So are there any unpaid emails that you would consider paying for? If it was a paid gate, if it was like magically like gated, would you pay for it to keep up with it?
Possibly, but these are like friends, I would say. Like Justin Mayers has a great newsletter, and I would probably pay for that. So it's usually solo bloggers or thinkers. Like I probably wouldn't pay for any company updates since they're typically funded via the marketing activities that they're promoting anyway. Mm-hmm. So like CXL has great information, but behind it is the implicit call to like buy their products. So I don't feel any compilation. Is that a word? I don't feel compelled to pay for something like that.
I think that might be another reason why some of these folks like endear me to them, is because it feels so authentic, which in turn makes me want to pay for things because they're not trying to get me to pay for things. I don't know if that's something you can capture out of like effort, but Steph Smith, Julian Shapiro, Nicholas Cole, like some of these folks I follow on Twitter and their emails and their blog.
Who, first off, I know Julian Shapiro runs Demand Curve. Who are the others?
Steph Smith works at The Hustle. She has a really interesting resume. But I think I stumbled upon her because she published an article called How to Be Great, Just Be Good Consistently.
I love that.
Right. It's so simple, but it's so well written. And she writes super in-depth stuff. And you can tell that she doesn't just like bang it out in a day. And then I was like looking at her blog. I was like, first of all, I like this person. She seems like someone I would just want to talk to in person anyway. But she also has created all these interesting products. Like she has this website called, it's a whole website of untranslatable words. And I went right to Redbubble and I bought her sticker to support her. And I don't even have it on my computer yet, but it's right here. And then I was reading her blog and I was like, oh, I love her writing style. Oh, she's writing about women in tech. Kind of relevant to me. I'm not like in coding or anything, but I read it anyway. And she wrote a whole guide on like her writing style and how she writes for her blog. And it's just a sense of authenticity that you don't get, I think, from a lot of people online. Most people who write online, within weeks or months turn it into like a paid thing, or they're trying to sell you something. That doesn't mean it doesn't have value, but I don't know. I guess I have like an authenticity meter. Maybe it's a little bit too rigorous.
There's 2 points I want to press on here. One, authenticity. I want to come back to that in a second because I think we could discuss what makes somebody trustworthy or what makes somebody worth following. But the process that you described of turning yourself into a follower, Steph Smith was her name?
Yep.
Okay, so it sounds you kind of followed like a breadcrumb trail a little bit. Like you didn't know anything about her. You discovered like your first point of contact was probably some viral article. It went to a lot of people. And then I don't know if you continued pursuing her other work just naturally or if you had discovered it serendipitously, but it seems like it took a couple touch points before you were like, fuck yeah, I have to follow this person.
Yeah, it definitely was. It was the first post itself, which was interesting to me. Obviously no one can, expect everyone to be hooked by that, but I went to her website. I appreciated her background. I thought it was impressive, but it wasn't just impressive. It was just like, it was kind of a hodgepodge and I liked it. Like it wasn't some step by step, not that that's right or wrong, but I just liked her background. I thought she was really interesting. Like, I just thought she had lots of passions, lots of interests that came through in her work. She created lots of free stuff online, which I thought was interesting too, in a world of gated everything. And then, yeah, I looked at her blog because it was a little bit out of kind of how you said, a mixture of like, if you were impressed and jealous about Adam's like blog, like success last year. I kind of felt the same thing. I was like, dang, like I like her. I want to be her. Like, I wish I could do what she's doing. And I also just really liked the way that she wrote. I don't know how else to explain it.
Do you think that mimicry, I don't want to call it mimicry, that aspirational aspect, you want to be like that person? Do you think that's a key criterion for becoming a follower of somebody?
I mean, yes and no. Like, there are like photographers and designers that I don't think I would consider myself at that level of following, but I do like their stuff. I like their work, but I don't want to be a photographer. So I guess in her case, it was front and center for me because she's also a writer and she writes online. So that element not only was it incredibly relevant to me, but it was like very close to how I identify myself and ways in which I'm trying to challenge myself this year. So that was an extra connection point, but I guess it depends. Like, she also, part of her audience is writers. So I think that was endearing to me as well, but it depends on the content that's being created. I'm not sure. I wouldn't say that the mimicry aspect is a key thing.
Yeah,
but it could
for
be.
myself, in reflecting on who I follow and how passionately and how closely, I have different modes of different types of membership and different audiences. Some of them are completely utilitarian. Simo Ahava and trying to figure out what to do on Google Tag Manager is sort of a utilitarian thing. I know I'm not going to be as good at Google Tag Manager and front end development and engineering as he is, and I don't expect to be. And then there's others who I look up to aspirationally in a business context, and I would say I read more of their stuff more often and more passively. Like, those are the ones that I'm probably going to sign up for their email list and read their books if they come out, and to consume everything they put out versus trying to seek something when I need it, such as Paleo Leap for recipes or Atlas Obscura, et cetera, et cetera. So it seems like there is, you might follow somebody more closely if you see yourself or something you want to be in them.
Yeah, I definitely think that that's a strong element in building affinity with an audience, but I don't think it's...
Or even if they have something that they're delivering in terms of information that you know you want in your life. Like, I found a new breed of people that I'm following is kind of like yogis and shit. I don't know how to describe this category, but it's like very like mental health kind of therapy focused people. Yeah. So Tara Brach, Gabor Mate is somebody I recently kind of went down the rabbit hole on. And then weirdly enough, Tucker Max, who I read his books in college, and he was a totally different person. I can't
believe that's what he writes about today. I saw him like for the first time last year. I was like, wait, you're talking about the Tucker Max? And this person's like, yeah, it's a great book. And I'm like, I don't believe you. I have to go check this out for myself.
Well, it's so weird. Yeah. Cause I used to read his books kind of like, for entertainment. And then he started writing about business and I was like, oh, this is interesting. Like I love startups and entrepreneurship. And now he's doing the whole deep dive on therapy and like basically going back and, resolving childhood trauma and doing his MDMA therapy and stuff like that. But I read these authors, and not just authors and thinkers and whatnot, Gabor Mate, I listen to him on podcasts because there's something that they're saying that I believe can help my own life. I think like they have some piece of information that I know is aspirational, even if themselves, they're like, I don't think I want to be like Tara Brach or like Gabor Mate. But they have something that makes they have a piece of information that will help me lead myself to the place that I want to be, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So you don't want to be them, but they can help you be the person that you want to be. I think that's what is interesting about this is like, everyone has this, like a certain lens, right, on life or on their niche of choice or whatever. And none of it's right or wrong per se, but I think a lot of today's content creation removes that lens. Like that's why so much of what's online is all similar, but it keeps people from connecting with you and then not only following what you're saying, like the information you're sharing, but like the perspective that you have. It's like yourself, that's the UVP that you have to share, in my opinion, depending on like what you're talking about and like what you're writing about. But I just wish more people could put their own perspective in their writing. I guess there's not a place for it in every content creation, but I don't know, maybe that's what's missing in a lot of what's out there today.
No, I think you're onto something. I wish we had a producer because I have to look this stuff up on my own now. I wish we had like a Jamie from like Joe Rogan's podcast. Like, Jamie, pull that shit up. But Naval Ravikant said something in his How to Get Rich tweet storm. Mm-hmm. Here it is. You can escape competition through authenticity when you realize that no one can compete with you on being you. That would have been useless advice pre-internet, but post-internet, you can turn that into a career. He said multiple things like this: escape competition through authenticity.
I just wrote an essay on that.
He's got a whole blog post about that.
That's essentially Emerson's self-reliance, but very, very simplified writing.
Yeah, it's very difficult to, I mean, it's easy advice to give and it's very difficult to exhibit. I think like be yourself. Like, what does that actually mean? But finding who you uniquely are and who you authentically are and being confident to portray that is a good way to build an audience. I think like when you're trying to be somebody else, you're trying to like hit that mediocre middle, you might rank in search, but nobody's going to give a shit.
Well, I just think that mimicry is more rewarded than ever today, especially in writing. Like, a lot of the strategy that's created is based on page one of Google. Like, obviously we want to make Google happy, as people say, but I don't believe that that alone can create an audience or following or affinity with people. Like, whatever you want to call it.
It's not effective either. If everybody's already ranking on page one, like how you have to have some strength that you're leaning on that is going to tell Google's algorithm that you're worthy of usurping those 10 that are already ranking there. So if you have a higher domain rating, then you can just publish mediocre shit all day and like outrank those that have less domain rating. But you kind of have to make it better or different in order for that strategy to work in the first place.
But think about like the person that's Googling something, right? Like, they are Googling some query, how to do X, this versus this. You might catch them on a good day when they're like, this person is cool, I'm going to subscribe to their email. But I believe most times they just want an answer. They're not in a place, they're not going to be open to like another email or another follower. Like, they're not in the mindset to become a follower, an audience member. They might convert. Does that make them a follower? I don't know. That's a whole other conversation.
That's interesting. Yeah. But it's kind of the opposite of like you not subscribing, but still being an audience member. But in this case, you have subscribed, you have converted, but you're kind of not an audience member.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, this person solved my problem. This person gave me this. I bought this. Do I care about the brand, or does the consumer care about the brand outside of what they got from them? Probably not. Maybe. I don't know. But I think if you just create page one content over and over again to make money, right? Like, that still has a purpose. But this all comes back to like customer loyalty, customer retention. Like, it's the same vibe, this whole like audience development, like building a following. It's all pretty much at least in the same lane. And now, how do you create content and how do you become discovered, if not through Google, in a way that does help you create that affinity? I don't know. Maybe social media. Like, I'm not sure. Maybe being
in Google. Okay. So like writing for the first page of Google, it seems like that is, you're trying to appease like the median on the bell curve. Like, you're going for like what is clearly expected from customers. So you can't write too different of stuff. You might write on a topic about, say, customer satisfaction. That's the keyword. You look at everything else that ranks and try to fit that format and maybe add a little spin and taste. But it's mostly the same. Let's say somebody lands on your page for that keyword. 2 days later, they search for a separate thing. They land on your website for a different keyword. They do that 3 or 4 more times and they start to say, Omniscient seems like they know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Is that a way of audience building? It seems like through mere repetition and satisfactory answers, you start to build trust.
I would say yes. Yeah. I mean, here's and talking more about the granular like content production process, which is where I live. Creating content that's just like what's on Google to get there won't set you apart from the other pages. I think that people should start with writing what they think they should write. And SEO, I don't know how this is going to go over, should be a secondary addition. Now, most of the stuff we write, even from like a thought leadership perspective as founders or partners or whatever, it's going to map back to a keyword, right? Because in most circumstances, or at least we can like tweak the topic, tweak the title to match a keyword of some sort. I'm sure audience development has a decent MSV, but the heart of the piece didn't come from the first page of Google. Like it came from like your opinion, your experiences, your stories, this conversation. Therefore, it's naturally going to be different, like, because it's just coming from you, like your perspective, your UVP, as I called it. Like, that's why I think so much of what's out there is the same, because literally the source of it, the heart of that idea came from what's already out there. Now, there's definitely time and place for that. Like there's value to that, more of the transactional side of things, obviously, like the repetition. But I think that the heart of these content ideas, if you can afford it, have the time and energy, they should come from you, come from us.
When you say UVP, is that unique value proposition or unique viewpoint, or what's the...
I was thinking value prop, but both definitely work.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think that makes sense to me. It's also 100% accurate how this topic came up. I don't remember the seed of where the idea came from, but it certainly wasn't keyword research. And I was like thinking about the question of how to build an audience. I think I was looking at Substack creators and, wondering how they built audiences or whatever. And then I looked at Ahrefs and figured out that audience development was the keyword with like 200 search volume, but I didn't know that beforehand. So I basically had the idea from an insight and mapped that to a keyword post hoc. And that's actually, we used to do that at CXL all the time, which I think CXL is a great example of a B2B company that's built a better audience than most companies have. A lot of them have done, CXL does crush it with SEO now, but when I was there, we were basically taking pain points and questions from people who read the blog and people who spoke at conferences and our own, experiences with clients and running A/B tests. And we would write about those subjects. And we actually didn't even care about SEO for the longest time. Halfway through my time at CXL, we started to map things to keywords, but we wrote content that people were subscribed. They would read every blog post. And if we wrote one thing wrong, they would try to correct us. Like we had that type of an audience.
That's a following. So how did you hear back from these folks? Did they email you? Did you have a space?
They would email us, comment on the blogs. They would tweet us, however they could get in touch.
I definitely think that's another element of a following of someone who wants to because not only can you make your audience feel like it's more of a relationship than just like this one-way mirror, but you also create a path where you can learn from them and then write what they want to hear. Again, it's probably reflected on SEO. Yeah, it's probably reflected on SEO. SEO is powerful. It tells us what people are searching for, what they need, what they want, but it shouldn't be like the beginning of your thought process. Like step one, look at what page you want to Google. But creating like a two-way street with your followers, your audience members, it's the best kind of feedback. Customers alone, like so many ideas, so many perspectives, so many questions. And then it starts to be like you're creating for them and then they stick around and all this stuff.
Do you think it's always possible or even always desirable to build an audience if you're a content marketer?
Man, I don't know. About like a personal audience?
No, I'm saying like for your company or for yourself. If it's for yourself, like I feel like you kind of have to build an audience because you're trying to attract people to you. But if you're working for a kitchen appliances company, like, do you need to build an audience?
An audience separate from the group of customers you have. Is that your question? Or your customers, your audience?
No, we can't. We got to delineate those two.
Yeah.
Customers are people buying your shit. I'm not like an audience member of, I have like these water filter things. Like, I don't know who makes them. Like I'm a customer, but I'm not an audience member.
I would say,
I don't know how to describe that, but
No, I know what you mean. I mean, there's lots of stuff around here that I
A fan, right? It's like an
looked at their
informational,
blog.
like
Yes.
consumer of sorts, right?
Right. I would say to drive like revenue, no, but it can only help. I think having an audience. Maybe it's not a necessity, but it can only help because it drives word of mouth. Like you've got interesting stuff you're posting, asking your readers, excuse me. It's going to start conversations, drive word of mouth. That's the audience. Those are the audience members that probably buy like water bottle stickers or like put Yeti stickers on their computers. Like they might have one Yeti water bottle, but they love the Yeti blog. They love the Yeti stuff. Like that's an audience. And like, that's not hurting, I don't think, anything. It's just complementing their base of customers and creating like loyalty, repetition, and like purchases. I think it also creates an easier feedback loop.
Yeah.
For writing to those customer pain points.
Well, Yeti is a great example of a kind of boring product that created a passionate fan base. So point taken on that one. I think that is kind of the exception that proves the rule in a way, in that it's not always, it's always possible to create an audience, but it's not always desirable or feasible or has like a direct causal pathway. Right. So I think you can stretch yourself and try to build passionate fans, and it could fail. So I think it's one of those activities that come from this the bucket on the barbell strategy that's a bit more variable and a little less predictable. So I think if, as you're doing your normal marketing activities, you happen through repetition, through good quality, through a unique style, if you happen to build an audience, I think that is all upside. But I think just pursuing that angle of building an audience, it's a risky strategy by itself.
Well, it can't be a strategy, or it's going to overwork itself. It's going to be, because what's going to happen with strategies, you're going to do research. How did this person build an audience? What did they say? How did they write it? It's not going to be you.
Yeah.
I mean, it might work, but like anytime you start to use, hey, look to them for inspiration. How did they do this? You're going to start even subconsciously like mimicking their voice, mimicking their stuff. It might work for a little bit, but the longevity of an audience comes from literally just doing whatever the hell you feel like doing. Not really, that was an aggressive way to say it, but
I actually think I think you're right. I think there is a clash between strategy and meticulousness and building a true audience. Because I think this is something I've learned from, I don't know if Joe Rogan has talked about this on his podcast, but he's been interviewed by other people about the making of his podcast. And he is, who knows? I mean, maybe this is just a talking point, but he's adamant that he doesn't look at metrics. He doesn't think about like what he's saying. He basically just has the conversations he wants to have with the people he wants to have them with.
Yep.
And that's the only way he knows to operate. And he knows deep down that if he veers from that, if he looks at the metrics, if he takes inputs, if he like takes feedback from people around him, producers and stuff, that the magic's going to be lost. So I think he's trying to protect the authenticity at all costs.
Yes. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't listen to his podcast, but like I know about him. I know his deal. And like, I'm sure if I wanted to listen to podcasts, I would definitely listen to his, because like he doesn't give a crap about anything. Like he just brings people on and he talks about whatever. And not only are you endeared to his product, his podcast, but him as a person. Like you want to know whatever he's saying about whatever. Doesn't matter. Does his podcast even have like a topic consistency of any sort?
No, I mean, he's got like bingo card items where he'll repeat the same things over and over. But I think that's just like, I think that's also an idiosyncrasy of Joe Rogan, is he'll just like, constantly bring up DMT and whatever.
I just feel like our creator economy would be so much more interesting. It's already very interesting, but so much more interesting if people just stopped looking at other people. This might be a whole other conversation that we should have, but it's hard. I mean, it's harder than ever. I just wrote another essay on this the other day. It's like harder than ever to be yourself, because we are like drowned in all these shoulds and coulds and strategies and hacks and tips. And it's just like, of course that stuff is valuable. Like success stories are great and people deserve to be like, share how they did it. And yes, we pick up something here and something there, things that infuse into our own strategy. But over time, like doing too much of that, you're going to lose that voice, or you're going to feel like your voice isn't good enough, or you're going to feel like your ideas aren't good enough. And I mean, I'm speaking from direct experience. So sometimes I wish I could just shut everything off.
Personally thinking now, over the years, I've read all these books on like, even like small books on persuasion, like how to win friends and influence people, or like, psychology books or business success books. And I think it was a process via insecurity and also via ignorance of like trying to layer on knowledge and be additive, figure out how did they do it and how can I like incorporate some of that into my life. And I think some of that is beneficial, but now I almost feel like, now that, especially that we're doing the podcast and now that we're branching out with Omniscient, it's been more a process of subtraction and figuring out, well, what is the authentic me, and like how can I bring that out? And I think you're totally spot on with that.
It's very hard.
So what's the secret to building an audience of passionate and loyal followers?
You're speaking to someone with 50 email subscribers, so I surely know the answer.
Well, when you think about the people that you follow, what is it about them? It seems like authenticity is the big ticket. Just be yourself, but it's not just that. It's like, not everybody that's just themselves and just authentic. Like, you don't follow all them.
No.
So there's some semblance of like quality, or like,
yeah, I mean, there's definitely a quality aspect, like an effort. I mean, they're not just themselves with abandon. Like, they still try to align something. I mean, going back to Steph, like, her writing is very good. Her ideas are very good. I mean, more than just being a good writer, she's just a cool thinker. Like, I've started to admire that over anything lately, because you've heard writing is thinking, essentially. And there's so much out there that makes me think less and less, like with less quality. Like, I want to be a better thinker. I want to manage my own ideas, my own perspective with a little bit more grace. So people who can do it themselves, and that inherently teaches me how to think better. So yeah, there's definitely a quality aspect to it, but I don't know if there's like a prescription, really. I mean,
there's an interesting thing you said. I don't know if this relates to audience building at all, but about reading stuff that makes you think less well. This concept, I think we've talked about recently, about if things are boring or neutral, like if you have to sit in a meeting and it's not necessarily hard, but it's also not easy or fun, it's not just that it's neutral. It actually subtracts energy from your next, whatever you were going to do next, and even the next day sometimes. Well, David Cadeby talked about that in his book, Mind Management. And I think he had a study where if you have a busy schedule on today, like, you're actually less creative the next day and the rest of the week. So I've started to look at things not as neutral. Neutral is negative to me now. Basically, if it's not adding value, then it actually is actively subtracting value, even if it appears neutral. Like, that's something that I've recently kind of reframed in my mind.
I just don't think that anything is neutral. I mean, when it comes to creativity, I think that unless you're in this momentous flow, creative energy takes 1.5 or 2x of your normal energy. I mean, at least to get started, like starting the car, like whatever, like it takes a lot of energy. Now, once you get rolling, like things might feel easier, but you come out of this creative flow and you do your admin task, meeting. You can't context switch right back to where you were. I mean, you have an allotment of energy every day, every week. It's going to be spent on something. And if it's not like in the creative realm, that energy is gone. So yeah, I mean, neutral, there are definitely things that are more neutral than negative, but in the scheme of things, I think neutral is negative. Like,
actually, I think I would rather have a neutral, or I would rather have a negative in my life than a neutral, because at least negative is interesting and has valence. Whereas neutral, I would rather hang out with like an asshole or like somebody who I dislike, as opposed to somebody who's just like completely not adding value at all. And like, I think the same thing about content. When I watch a movie, if it's just blech, like middle ground, middle brow, like that's the worst. Like, I would way rather watch, what was that movie that James Franco spoofed? The Room. It was the worst movie ever created. Did you see this?
No. I tend to avoid movies that are rated the worst.
No, but it was so bad that it was good. It was like a cult classic.
What? Is that like that Sharknado stuff?
Yeah, stuff like that. So it's so terrible that it actually is value additive because of that.
Like, adds
but like a neutral movie that's forgettable, like, get that out of my life. That's just a waste of time.
Yeah.
So there maybe is like some edict, at least. I don't know if this is a formula, but be interesting I think is one thing you can't do without if you're building a true audience, not just a utilitarian. Like I go to this website when I need to fix my car. That's not necessarily an audience. I think it's veering towards it if it's the same website every time. But I think being interesting is probably as close to non-negotiable as we can get. And I think also probably some quality indicator too. I don't know what that would be.
If you think about it from like a consumer, reader, audience member perspective, like we are followers to more than we realize. I can't think of anything off the top of our head, but I'm sure there's some normal, boring website that we all prefer to go to because it happens to be more interesting than its competitors. We're going to fill our docket with followings regardless. So even if you are a car maintenance website or, I don't know, a water filter website, like you might as well add some spice. Like, I don't think it can take anything away from what you're doing. Like I said, like you don't have to try to build an audience, but I don't think it's going to hurt. Maybe it'll be more expensive. You have to hire like an audience builder, like a writer or something. Like maybe it'll take a little bit more to see ROI on it, but all it's going to do is endear yourself to people who come and try to, like, they convert and they're like, oh, this is really funny, or this is really interesting. Like, I think it only adds.
I just thought of something. So I think being interesting is one component, but I just thought of one of those resource websites when you were saying that about car websites. I go to the site examine.com all the time when I'm looking for information on supplements. And it's not interesting. It's just like summarized information on different studies done. You know, say if I'm looking up L-theanine or something like that, they say this has been shown to promote relaxation or focus, or whatever. They give you kind of the meta-analyses of all the studies that have been done. So I like that because it's useful. It's not entertaining. It's not unique. I guess it is unique in how they summarize information.
Right.
But I think there's another pillar to this. You know what it is? It's trust. I trust that I can go to their website and I'm not going to get bullshit information.
Yep.
And I think trust is built through repetition and consistency. So that's where it comes in, where, like, you know, we were talking about the website you see like 6 different times on Google. After a while, you start to say, these guys seem to know what they're talking about. I'm starting to trust them. But to get to the top of Google, they have to have some sort of utility. Right. They have to have some sort of useful information. And so that SEO may be the quality component. Yeah. And SEO and totally. So we're coming up with something like a formula, I think. I think trust is the biggest factor. Now that I said that out loud, it's like all the people that you're talking about, whether you pay for them, whether you follow them on Twitter, there's inherently trust. Yeah. And even if it's not useful, even if it's not you're trying to learn from them or be them, I'm thinking about comedians now, and I trust that they're going to make me laugh. Like that's still trust.
Yeah. I mean, that I would say the heart of trust in essence is definitely consistency and somewhat of a niche, I guess, or like a specialization. This is more companies than like individual writers, I would say. Because I think writers can ebb and flow based on how they're feeling that day or what they're interested in. So there's definitely like different avenues of audience building for different like purposes.
Is there anybody you used to follow but don't anymore? If you don't want to say like specifically who, that's fine. But if you have somebody in your mind.
Yeah. Honestly, it's maybe I'm more sensitive to it because I just spend all day online. But when people just start to get so blatantly salesy and like, in my opinion, they stop writing. And this is just, I guess, more writers. I don't know. I guess it's when they just really start to promote things and sell things, and it tends to lose that coffee chat vibe. But, you know, you can't blame them. Maybe they created enough of an audience that they want to start making money off of it. I totally respect that, but I don't. It's kind of like influencers. Like, you remember when influencers were like actually influencers? They're like, I'm not getting sponsored. I love this face wash. And now it's like ad. It's like, I don't trust you. Like, you're getting paid for all this crap. Like, how do I know if you actually like it? You know, that's why it's like reviews, not website reviews, like on third-party sites most of the time. And then people who are like, I'm not getting paid for this, I will immediately listen to that. Because I know that's like they're genuinely recommending.
It's like you lost trust in that.
Sorry, you cut out.
I think we cut out there. Sorry. I think it sounds like you lost trust in them. Like you don't trust that their information is totally with integrity because they're selling things.
The last thing you heard was that like they started doing ads, that part?
Yeah. So basically they started selling, influencers. You trusted their opinions before, their curation and recommendations of products. But then when it got too salesy, you started to question, like, do they like this product? So it seems like it comes down to a trust and integrity thing still.
And I mean, again, it's not like it's not integrity because they're making a living. Like they have a very large following, like good for them. But my personal approach is like, if you're sponsoring 6 different like products, like I don't know which one you actually like, and when folks are like, I'm not paying for this. Like I read a book, it's not in here. It's called The Simple Path to Wealth by J.L. Collins. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It was like an amazing take on like financial freedom and investing. And he talks all about Vanguard, just like Vanguard left and right. And he says multiple times, he's like, I'm not getting paid for this. I just like it. It worked for my family. Guess what I did? I switched my whole Roth to Vanguard, like right after reading it. Because I don't know, like not only did he give valuable information, he obviously walked the walk. He's not just talking the talk, but he like wasn't getting paid for it, which like made me trust that. Now, for those like listening or reading or whatever, and they want to get paid for an audience, like I'm not going to stop you. There's definitely value in that too, but
there's a weird trade-off though.
Yeah,
for sure. I think that's a balance that we're probably going to have to discuss on a different article or different podcast, because there is kind of an inherent dichotomy between being completely authentic and selling something. But we're a business. We're helping all of our clients with content, and their businesses, and they need to make money from their content. So I think there's still some clash there.
I'm talking more of individual audiences still. Now I've bought things recommended by folks who are getting paid for it. I guess it's just a setting and maybe the mood, but the bigger audience following, like the sense of losing trust it's kind of like when it's like the value of your word, like if someone just like recommends everything left and right, like he's just a yes man or she or whatever. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, but what do you actually like, or what do you actually endorse? So there's just like a ratio there of like, if you endorse everything or it's hard to explain, I guess, but then it's like the value of that endorsement goes down.
Yeah. Yeah. You're building up sort of equity in your opinion, and you can withdraw from that account if you like promote products. Like you can make money from that, but your account is your equity is lower after that. Yeah. So you have to like strategically choose when and where to like sell. That goes back to like, I think Gary Vee's old book, like the jab, 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 right hook, which I never read, but I know it's one of those with a title. I read like a paragraph or a chapter of it. Yeah. Yeah. So actually, interestingly enough, Gary Vee is somebody who I used to follow, but don't anymore. And I think that was because I changed. I think I was really resonant on the hustle message, and I was a little more naive in terms of like my business sense when I was following him. And after a while, I just didn't get as much value. So I don't know if he changed per se. So that's an interesting one. I think maybe, I think you can just like lose interest. That's one case. The integrity thing that you're talking about is probably the reason I've stopped following most of the people that I used to follow, that I have stopped following. It's like Dave Asprey. I guess I still look at a little bit of what he's putting out, but I got into Dave Asprey like all other tech bros around the time of Bulletproof Coffee, because I was looking to surge my productivity, and the Bulletproof Coffee was pretty cool. So I started drinking that, and I'm like, oh, this is, he's onto something. So I started reading his blog and going down the rabbit hole of biohacking. But then over the last couple of years, I've seen a lot of questionable information come from Dave. And I won't say it's wrong, but I don't think he's definitely selling a lot. He's getting a lot of affiliate kickbacks and stuff. So there's that whole sales pitch thing that you were talking about. But then two, I'm not sure, he's an information curator, and I didn't totally trust the quality of all the information like I do with examine.com. So I just found other influencers who I trust more in the nutrition and health space. So that was one where I lost faith and trust and kind of just went elsewhere. And then there's others that I've stopped following because they got boring, because I just, lost interest in what they were doing. They weren't doing anything new anymore. Like Blink-182 was my favorite band from childhood, and they're still putting out albums, but they're just so dull and so formulaic that I can't.
So would you rather them have stopped than do bad new stuff?
That's a good question.
That's what, and that's another discussion we need to have about like perpetual creation or maintaining.
I don't think, no, I prefer that they keep going. They can do what they want. They deserve to cash in too. But
thank you for your permission.
my interest stops though. I guess like I don't mind their new stuff, but I don't follow.
Does it affect your perspective on their old stuff?
Not at all.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, no. I would like to have a conversation too about like content curators versus creators and the value of that, and if we have the same amount of trust or following in those folks as we do the original creators. I've seen so many curators like digests, and it's like, yeah, you have a great knack for finding stuff online, but you didn't create anything new. Like I think I followed 2 digests because they have good stuff, but them as individuals, I don't think I would say I followed them. And then you think about the stuff that they're sharing and those original writers and creators, and you're like, they're too busy creating to do this. So I respect that. I mean, I'm assuming.
That's a really good question. Because some of the people that I followed,
the rise of digests and, all this stuff.
It's a huge thing right now. Newsletters, and curation. I think that curators can build a following if they like develop a unique flavor of their own curation and taste. So I think Tim Ferriss is kind of a curator at heart. I think he goes out and his podcast is curation. His books, even back to the 4-Hour Work Week, the remarkable thing wasn't that you should delegate and leverage and do all that stuff. It was like he gave all kinds of tools and tactical suggestions and shit. And I think he was curating even back then for Our Body, same thing. He just went out and tested himself and like talked to all these experts.
A lot of people do that.
It's totally curation.
For online
through
content,
his curation, it's actually creation too, though.
No, yes. I mean, in the book sense, like I'm talking about emails that are just like line item links. But I guess there's value in curation for a following or traffic, because those folks you shared about give you traffic from their sites or the backlinks or whatever. So there's definitely a strategy to it. But like I just followed the Substack. I'm very, very like picky with my email. It's like one of my 2021 resolutions. But so it was like a big deal that I followed the Substack, and it's this guy, and I think it's called, oh man, it had such a good name, but he wrote a book too. It's called Daily Routines. And he basically goes back through like all kinds of creators, even back to like
Mason Curie or whatever.
Maybe.
He wrote a book called like Daily Routines or something like that. Yeah,
that's his book. But his newsletter, yes, Subtle Maneuvers is what the newsletter is called. So first of all, I'm like, that's cool. And every Monday he sends out a curation essentially of like all kinds of daily routines from writers, all kinds of creators like photographers and stuff. And that is inherently curation. Like he's not creating that himself, but he does write about it. So there's like
a great example,
a creation aspect to it. Like he doesn't copy and paste or share other people's articles, but the topic itself, like it's other people's ideas, like other people's routines. But it feels genuine to me so far. I've only followed it for like a day or so.
But he's like he's like the Guggenheim. He's like a curator in the sense that like he creates his own experience that is its own product. Because like when you said his name, I knew his name. So he's not just like throwing links out there. Like his product is definitely unique. So
that's interesting. It's like a museum. Like museums are curated, but they can create their own experience,
Yeah, you still have a vibe in the Louvre.
Yeah, you do.